if we're really going to make a difference of this, if we're really going to protect the environment, if we're really going to, fight different climate issues, we really have to involve rural people in the process. And that means, first of all, being able to talk to each other.
This is Barn Raising. I'm Sara June. Barn Raiser had the chance to visit with two organizers from rural districts in America's heartland. Today, we'll be talking about land use and zoning issues in Arkansas and Ohio. Zoning may not seem like the most urgent concern in today's political scene, but when you understand the impact data centers, development, and loss of cropland has on our day-to-day lives, you might want to pick up the phone and talk to your city council or county board about the plans that they have for your home. I just want to open our conversation with a little bit to learn a little bit about who you are, where you're from. If you could just introduce yourselves and what you're doing on the ground in your communities there, and then we'll go into some questions.
Hi there. My name is Zana English, and I am originally from the great state of Arkansas. I make my home between the rural areas of Arkansas and Memphis, Tennessee. And what I currently do is that I am an independent researcher and data analyst. Part of what I do is that I work with local governments and other clients and consult them on drafting AI policy. Particularly, I work with rural governments or small local governments as they try to figure out how they're going to implement AI policy that has oftentimes been sometimes mandated by the state government, or how they're going to approach applying AI to their government services.
All right. Jessica, what about you?
I'm Jessica Eckleberry. I am here in Wayne County, Ohio. We're about halfway between Cleveland and Columbus, right in the heart of Ohio's urban food production area. Currently, I work with Ohio State at the Ohio State Ag Innovation Center. So we work one-on-one with businesses or with farmers wanting to start or grow a value-added business. But my background has been in local food through, distribution networks. And then I've also done farmland protection for our county too. So a lot of either easements, succession planning, so anything to try to help people stay on the farm and make money off of what they're doing.
Thank you. That's great. Tell me, what is the Dirt Road Organizing Group and what is the Climate Cohort? Zaina, let's start with you if you're
Sure.
ready.
Our organizing is a group that really focuses on organizing in rural communities, finding ways to build power and particularly find connections, mostly for progressive causes in communities that sometimes people, I would say in many cases, are from a national perspective may consider to be left behind. But it reminds us, for me, that these communities not only matter, but their voices are also just as important. And particularly looking at the climate cohort, we're looking at how environment plays a role in the communities and looking at the environmental issues that are impacting the rural communities, which what people don't, I sometimes guess because the intention is not honest, people in rural communities care about the environment very dearly because their primary economy is agriculture, which is tied to the climate. And so for us,
Right.
Dartboard organizing helps us really organize people around issues that really touch at the heart of how people live in these communities and their
Right.
not only their way of life, but really their livelihood, their histories, their lifestyles. And we bring that to the forefront by reminding people of how to organize in these communities and make these and give these communities a stronger voice so that they can have the same amount of, I would say, not even I don't want to like so we have, because we I feel like inherently we have dignity, but that can be oftentimes ignored by other people or larger places. And Dartboard organizing allows us to organize, gives us strategies to organize around issues that people care about, that remind people that we're here and we still have we have a say about what's going on. We care about what's going on in our communities and what's going on around us.
Thank you. Jessica, do you have anything to add about the climate cohort or your experience or the definitions of working with those groups?
Yeah, really training people to work in place and getting the network out there's been a realization that a lot of the so-called climate stuff, like Zaina was saying, it gets overlooked in rural communities, and they've even seen, some of the tactics that have happened over time have turned rural people, politically, and a lot of, issues will vote or are turned off by any climate
Mm-hmm.
issues. Let's put it this, that they are turned off when people start to talk about climate. However, they are the fiercest protectors on the ground. We like Zaina said, we live here. We live in the climate and in the environment, and are directly impacted by things like climate change. So how do
Yeah.
we change the narrative, and how do we speak about those things in a way that are bringing people in and not
Mm-hmm.
turning them off? And so that's what Dirt Road's really trying to do, is to reach out across the country and say, if we're really going to make a difference of this, if we're really going to protect the environment, if we're really going to, fight different climate issues, we really have to involve rural people in the process. And that means, first of all, being able to talk to each other.
That's right. And just for context, the US Census places rural residents at about 20% of our whole population in this country. Demographer Tim Slack says that that number is more like 14%. So if only 14% of the US population is considered rural, we are definitely a diaspora of people that need to have coalescing groups like Dirt Road Organizing to help us amplify our needs. Because if when we have our populations concentrated on urban centers, they don't always know what's going on right in
Mm-hmm.
outside our back doors.
And a lot of times, at least we're in Ohio, we're gerrymandered so
Mm-hmm.
much, politically we don't matter, so how do we work together to be able to do what we need
Yeah,
to do? It's a different scale when you're working rural, for
Absolutely.
sure.
that's right. So, Jessica and Zaina, you were part of the climate cohort for Dirt Road Organizing, and I'd like to hear about your experience there. And then also, what was the importance of having an organization like Dirt Road Organizing in this cohort? What did that mean to you for your work?
What was really great about it is, especially like, working a place and working community, I can get really, focused, hyper focused on what's going on here and my own problems, or our own problems. And what I thought was really great, I absolutely loved getting to meet people like Zaina and people from all over the country who are just doing absolutely amazing things, hearing about the different issues that are happening in different communities and how they're dealing with it, and just really being with such a inspirational group of people. So it helped to kind of see the forest for the trees and see how what we're doing does make an impact overall, and that you have just, all these millions of little people everywhere who are working so hard to make a difference, and you feel that sense of power and camaraderie, even though we were
Yeah,
so many miles apart and we have such different backgrounds and we work in different
yeah,
areas. I think that was it. You can get really bogged down because you feel like this work will
yeah.
never be done. It's never going to be over, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
thousand losses, and how do you get up and how do you keep moving and doing it? And I think that was really, really a special takeaway.
Great. Zaina, what about you?
It was for me the opportunity to meet so many different individuals who were doing amazing work and who were essentially, in my opinion, inspiring me. One of the things I oftentimes do is that I tend to go big. I cast a wide net, and working with Durban organizing the climate cohort made me have to kind of narrow in and focus on specifically what are the environment impacts that are specifically impacting my community. I like to see connections. This made me focus, really hone in on the people in my community around me. And because of that, I was able to begin to work with people to learn about the current networks that they have in place or how they're currently communicating and working to expand it because I'm already thinking big systems picture. For me, the climate cohort made me realize the big picture is great, but what are in the details? The details allow us to create the picture. And what that did for my own community is that it helps me to really hone in on the people in the community that I knew that, hey, this is, I can work with you guys. Let's actually put you all together. It made me really, for me, as someone who goes between an urban and rural environment, it really made me stop for a second and see what are the details here in the picture. And I've generally, and because I come from a background of organizing, it really helps build the relationships and maybe realize just how important those relationships are and how interconnected those relationships need to be, as well as how much repair is needed in relationships in order to move things forward.
So when we got together on the email and first started conceptualizing what we would talk about here, the top of the list was zoning. And I was like, okay, let's talk zoning. So my first question for you is, why should people be concerned with zoning laws?
Zeta, do you want to hit that with the data centers?
Absolutely. So the whole thing, or the news that's sweeping the nation, or the things that most everyone is hearing about on their day-to-day news, is about data centers being put into different communities and people fighting back and protesting against that. Here in my home, where I like to call, my original home is Arkansas, and I tend to go between Arkansas and Memphis, Tennessee. We currently have been the national news a couple of times because of Elon's data centers that are in Memphis. And recently, Google has decided to put not one, but two of their own data centers, one in West Memphis, which is just outside of Memphis, and one in Little Rock. There are also several other data centers that are being slated for development in the state of Arkansas, which is largely rural. And what that has created is a lot of these data centers tend to be located near communities. And what happens when we put these data centers is that, of course, what you find is that they are oftentimes in communities that are kind of out of the way, or where people would consider to be, in some cases, right where people are living. So, and of course, when we talk about these zoning problems, or where you're going to put them, when you put them very close to residential neighborhoods, you now have, of course, problems with pollution, noise issues, and recently people have been talking about how loud they are. It completely and utterly changes how the entire city, as well as the environment of a neighborhood, becomes when a data center is put there. And that's not even, we're not even getting to what it's going to cost to actually power that, or the other impacts it's having on people living close to them.
Yeah, awesome. Jessica, what about you? Do you have anything to add to the zoning issue in Wayne? Is it Wayne's County? Wayne County,
Wayne, just
Ohio?
Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, where we're at is we are not zoned. We are completely unzoned, which makes us a really big target for different industries that are looking to come in. And part of my job when I was working with farmland protection for the county was to try to figure out, how do we preserve, which is in our comprehensive plan, the rural quality of life, the rural character. And then when I think about it on the farming side, like, this is where our food is coming from. We're sitting right on the part of the state that has some of the best, most productive agricultural soils. It plays a big part in the economics of the county, and we can actually support our region. So when we're starting to think about what's going on with the West Coast and the food production system, like, we really need to lean into the places in the country where we are set up to produce food. And when that's Wayne County is that. So we're being targeted for either different levels of growth, or they're looking at, solar panels was a big one, any sort of data centers, because you can look on a map and just see, oh, there's big, flat, empty land, and it's totally unzoned. So they can come to it very easily. So we're a real hotbed for developers. So when we start to think about farmland preservation, we're looking at it not just from an individual farm of, what I can do to preserve my farm, but how do we then work together to do that? And so we've seen a lot of changes over the last, I'd say, 5 years, where it used to be very anti-zoning. And now our rural area is starting to kind of come around to it, of understanding and looking at zoning is what it what is that notification getting up? Zoning is it means us deciding together what we want to happen in our area. And so really starting to see that change being made. It's still being considered. It's, we're still far off from getting there, but at least you can have the conversation now.
This is awesome because later on in the conversation, I want you to unpack a little bit more of that, both Zaina on the data centers and then also the cropland, Jessica. But first, I want to ask Zaina. You noted that there's a marked divide in your community about data centers and renewables like solar arrays. Can you tell us a little bit more about the divide that you see in Arkansas? What is this divide?
So the divide has to come between the people who are interested in the investment that's going to be made, and oftentimes the people who are going to be directly impacted by living near the data center or being in a community where they are finding their data center being put near them. Um, Oftentimes this divide comes because of how the data center was introduced to the community. In many cases, it was the citizens actually found out after the fact. And so by the time people found out, oh, we're going to put a data center here, decisions had already been made, and no one, for a lot of us, it was very much like we didn't have community input. We didn't even get a choice to say we don't want this here. Leadership made this decision without us being really present or being notified ahead of time. And so for a lot of people, it's this feeling of I didn't really get a choice about this data center coming to my community, and now it's here. What are we doing about it? And then the other comes from people who are concerned about what that's going to mean for farmland, who are maybe in the agriculture community. They don't necessarily own the farm, but they're worried that, well, we're taking up all our arable land. What's going to happen to our ability to farm? Or what happens if we live near these energy? Whatever happens, we live near solar panels or wind turbines. Is that going to happen? Of course, this is all things that people just worry about. So, but these are the conversations that I hear. But more importantly, it's a combination of people not being notified ahead of time and people worried about how these new inputs, whether it be renewable energy structures like solar panels or wind turbines, how it's going to impact their day-to-day lives and change their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. Jessica, you mentioned that historically anti-zoning laws were preferred in Wayne County, but now you say that even the Farm Bureau is shifting its stance on that. And is that changing then on the ground there where you are in Wayne County?
I would say the appetite for discussion of it is changing. And we don't even have anti-zoning laws. We just don't have any zoning. So if you live out in the country, in the rural areas, in the townships, and your neighbor wants to sell their farm and put a Dollar General or a chicken farm or a pig farm or a dump there, they can do it. And it's just wide open to be able to do whatever you want. Personal property rights are just, they're really big. And that's our rural character. That's our, we're going to do it by ourselves and no one's going to tell me what to do on the land. But the concern comes is that it's like, your neighbor isn't necessarily going to be a farmer anymore. They could be even a housing development or, a new grocery store going up in the area. So how do we sit there and say, like, where should those things be located? Like, yes, we need more housing. We need solar. We need different sort of energy and different, businesses. But how do we put that in a way that fits with not just our infrastructure? So, where do we already have our sewage and water plants, but also where are the soils that are most productive? Where are the farmers situated where they want to continue farming? So that's been a lot of what I've done is we have a group in town called the Wayne County Ag Success Team that represents all sorts of different. So we're so excited.
We're gonna unpack. I'm going right into that for my next question. So hold that thought. You ladies are really jumping ahead because I've got you. We're gonna get there.
But that's what we talk on the ground a lot about, what's going on. And the Farm Bureau is a big part of that. And they've been really wonderful here. And our Farm Bureau's actually, the Ohio Farm Bureau has been doing messaging and talking to people about data centers for Ohio too, because it's like,
Yeah.
these are coming in. How do we be prepared? And it happened years ago when solar panels were a big push and those are coming in. And then you're acting reactively trying to stop it, saying, oh, we don't want them here. We don't want
Right.
this farm to sell out and put solar panels. But then, okay, that changes. Well, then it's something else. And so I think
Right.
it's because this has been happening faster and faster that maybe people are starting to say, like, okay, we need to get together and talk about what's best for us and make those decisions at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Zaina, so backing up a little bit in your work in data analysts, I noticed that, okay, so I did some research. Arkansas has like 11 data centers, and
Hmm.
7 of these are, it says they're around Little Rock. 7 of them
Hmm.
are around Little Rock. In your work in data analysis, you say that you're looking at approaches to technology that prioritizes people and ecosystems. What does human ecosystem centered technology look like? And do the Arkansas data centers fall within that scope? Or what does that look like?
That's a really good question. And one of the things I am very passionate about in my own work is looking at technology that really supports human beings and really supports having a good quality of life for human beings. Now, do these data centers support a human centered approach to technology? Well, we have to factor into these things of how are these centers impacting one's quality of life. Oftentimes we focus on the economics of things. Like it's going to bring in jobs. This is a good thing if people are able to work, or if there are jobs in the community, then naturally we should be able to see an uptick or an increase in the quality of life or how or the standard of living of where people are because we're bringing in revenue, we're bringing in jobs. But when we look at the impacts that we find these data centers having in communities that they are placed, we oftentimes really don't see that happening. Yes, they bring in jobs, but maybe only a couple of hundred, which is really not enough for the community itself. The next thing is that we oftentimes talk about what happens around data centers. Typically, what happens is that when a data center comes into a community, people find that their energy costs rise, their water costs rise, and the quality of water lowers. The whole point of human centered technology is to try and make human lives better or to make it easier. What we tend to see with these data centers is really the opposite happening, is that we oftentimes see a lowering of the quality of life or the standard of living in communities that they are brought in to. So when we think, and the reason why it's oftentimes pushed by people who want more business, because at first, in a lot of these communities, we are in some cases really starved for jobs. They want jobs to come in because they want investment into the community that would generate revenue that can end up going back into maybe building up infrastructure or going to the city government to where it could help people, because that's the whole mentality, is that we bring a data center, it's going to generate revenue for the people, for the town, for the county, and we can use that to build out projects. Well,
Right.
what you
Right.
sometimes find is that what sometimes find that makes things really lucrative is that actually the data centers are getting tax cuts. So they come into the community and we're like, oh, we're going to generate revenue. Oh, by the way, we have this law in place that the reason why they're coming in here is because they're actually getting a tax cut. So
Tax cuts.
we're actually not going to be generating as much revenue as we thought we were going to be having. So
Well, and there's always the concern too that in 3 years, somebody over in Missouri, some town over in Missouri is going to offer even a better deal. And then they're going to
right,
close down and they're going to hop and skip over to another state. And what
exactly.
I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with Mayor Kinder in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And
Mhm.
we were talking about how every year about 500 corporate relocations go out into the United States, but we have 19,000 urban centers. So
Mm.
if there's 19,000 urban centers across the United States all bidding for only 500 corporate relocations, how realistic is it to say we're going to create jobs, we're going to bring jobs, and then when they arrive, maybe they're going to move to Wisconsin in 3 years because there's a better deal. So
Right.
so
And this could happen with data centers, but the one thing that we have with data centers, kind of very similar to solar panels, is the permanence of it all. They tend to stay in a place for a long time because it holds the company's sensitive information. It's critical data infrastructure for these companies, so they really are trying to keep it in a certain location for as long as they possibly can in a particular environment because they want it to be done cheap. They also want it to be kind of secure as well because their data for a lot of these tech companies quite literally is their lifeblood. But if with enough pressure, they can end up moving, and what you have left is what happens when the data center leaves. The whole point of the tech center is that they are hoping not to leave. But when we talk about what happens when the data center leaves, what happens when we decide to close a solar farm, what happens to the land and the people around it? And to say that closing them would kind of be an interesting thing to watch happen because the process of going through that is a bit difficult. um, to answer your final question about do I think it's human-centered technology, if you look at the impacts that the data centers are having on these communities and what it's actually doing for the people there, I think we would kind of agree that it's really not really fulfilling the title of having being human-centered technology because of the way that it is not really increasing the quality of life for people around it, which is what we want human-centered technology to do. It should consider people first and improve the life of people.
here,
Look,
here.
And
Well
I'll stop
said.
there.
No, yes, thank you. Yes. Jessica, now let's get into this ag success team. In Wayne County, you have some of the richest cropland in the United States.
yes,
And I was really interested to read up on this ag success team. And then you have something called ag security agreements.
yes.
Can you get into the weeds a little bit with what both of these things are? I think a lot of agricultural counties and districts around the country would be really interested to hear what these things are.
Yeah. So, starting off the ag success team, well, I'll back it up a little bit. Well, we always say like it starts in the soil, right? And where we're at in Ohio is the soil was brought here by the glaciers. So it was created millions of years ago when the glaciers came down from Canada, scooped out the Great Lakes, and they ended right here, like right where I'm sitting, and just dumping all that beautiful soil. So in creating those layers, that's then, creating the place where the food is grown. So it's all starting there, and it really is irreplaceable. Can't be moved. Once it's destroyed, once it's compacted, it's not coming back. So that's a big part of who we are. That's why folks started farming here, and that's why our culture and our economy has grown up is really based on the soil. So about 20 years ago, a group of folks got together who were just concerned about agriculture. Even at that time, there's always been pressure. Through the 90s, there was a lot of development. We had a lot of industry here. There were changes going on. And then also with the growth of Columbus to the south, Cleveland to the north, the two will merge just about where I'm sitting if it continues to go where things are going. So these group of people got together and just really started to say all of the different support industries and support organizations. I'm with Ohio State. We have a campus right here in town. But then there's also, the Farm Bureau and the different policy makers and also like farm equipment manufacturers, all local government, and then just concerned farmers too. So we're really looking at farming from all different aspects and saying, how can we work together? The work together on problems. But then the other thing that's really exciting that comes from it is just the network. So when something is happening, you can get the word out to all the different aspects of the farming community really quickly. And that's also important here because we are also home to the second largest Amish population in the United States outside of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so that is very locally run. And so when something happens and you need to contact, it's like you need to know the bishops to talk to them and get the word out. I was part of the Ag Success team back probably about 15 years ago when we had the pipelines coming through, where it was natural gas moving through the area. And when that was coming in, there were a lot of predatory people getting people to sign leases. They're coming from out of town. There's lots of money. But it's like you don't know what you're signing away. You don't know what the contract is. So how do we get the word out to those networks? So we can really activate in that way, but in a lot of times it's just staying in touch, talking, knowing who to direct folks to, and when you need resources, when you need help.
Right.
That's a big part of it.
Right.
So ag security areas, to flip on that one, that's actually something that is run by the state. So that's coming out of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and it's two-sided. One side is on protection, and on the other side is economic development. So what it is you find a group of farmers, so it could be one farm or it could be neighboring farms, that create at least a 500-acre block, and they sign up for this ag security area. It's a 10-year agreement that says we want to keep farming in this area. So it's kind of a form of self-zoning in a way, where they say we've all agreed, the neighbors sign off on it, it gets approved by the township, it gets approved by the county, to say that, we're going to continue farming in this area. So the nice part is on the planning side, you can look at a map and see, I say it's like a big billboard from space, where you can see these farmers are not planning on selling. They are planning on staying farming here. So don't go there, So if you have developers or somebody coming, this is not where you want to go. This is where farming is going to happen. It gives them some extra protections against nuisance laws or any sort of, smell coming from neighbors. But on the other side, let's say if they want to build some new infrastructure, they want to put in a new barn or something else that would then increase their tax base, they can apply for an abatement. So this is a way that then the county can help encourage that economic development comes from agriculture too. So it's a twofold thing. They're really great. Ohio, like I said, it's a program in Ohio. Out of, I think, the 17,000 acres in the state of Ohio, over 11,000 are in Wayne County. So we're kind of the ones leading the way. Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you. All right. So I just pulled this off the Guardian news today, and I just have to bring this up. And again, this is data centers, but my question is a little bit different. And I'm going to have to look down to read this. So again, this is just dropped in the Guardian today. It was reported by Oliver Millman. The article is about the Stratus AI data center project, which was approved for Box Elder County in Utah. It's projected to be 62 square miles, basically the size of Manhattan. And the project is driven by a venture capitalist named Kevin O'Leary, who says that the project will show the Chinese and the rest of the world that the U.S. will provide the computer power to our AI companies that defend the country. Can you tell me, when you look at, right? So I just want your reaction. As rural people, we are always sold the story of jobs. We're always sold the story of protecting American interests and defense of our country. How does this land for you as rural, small town folks in Ohio and Arkansas to hear what developers are actually thinking?
Jessica, you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest defense is having food and having water. And we are not independent and we are not free if we can't provide for ourselves. And that I don't know. That's all I've got right now.
So, what about you? Do you have a visceral reaction?
Oh, very. So funny enough is that one of the things that I do in my work is that I actually connected with people who worked or people who are having data centers move into larger cities. So one of my contacts actually works within the city of Tucson. And just not that long ago, they actually managed to defeat a data center wanting to come in. And one of the big things that we have to talk about is geography. Where they are choosing to put the data center, where they were going to put a data center originally in the city of Tucson, Arizona, is in Tucson, Arizona. It's a desert. They are asking them to use their precious water reserves. And the first thing and this is what we talk about when it comes to human center, about the quality of life that tends to happen, or what these data centers bring into the community. How does it actually improve people's lives? And every instance that we typically see a data center come in, the big thing is that first and foremost, in the West, particularly on the desert, water is as valuable as gold. And the first thing that people were saying is, what's going to happen? Because all the data centers need, particularly fresh water. Drinking, that's our drinking water. And once the water has been used in the data center, or used to cool off are used to basically cool off the large computer sets that they're using to keep this data running, or to store this data, it really can't be used anymore. It's not safe for human consumption anymore. And the question is, okay, so what do we do with it? Also, what about our drinking water? Because out west, their water is already a precious resource. They are already running out. And then that's not even to talk about the energy costs. The big thing that I remember with Utah's data center is that it would literally need more energy than the entire state of Utah can provide. That, for a lot of people, when we hear that, it's almost very reminiscent to because my big thing is artificial intelligence. It's very clear that people are marketing this. This is something that you tell investors. We're building a data center that's going to beat China and it's going to show American interest. Okay, amazing. This is also in the same right. We're going to create AI is going to take people's jobs. We're creating AI that's going to put people, like, it's going to be so much easier. It'll save money and costs. And then people turn around and wonder why no one's interested in this. You quite literally just told people you are going to put them out of a job. You quite literally just told people that you are going to be siphoning their fresh water and their electricity, which they need to live. And so for a lot of small town people, it seems like this is the PR move, but we already know how that's going to impact us on the ground, in that we are losing access, or our precious water reserves are being drained. And then we see our energy costs go up. And it's already, for a lot of us, very tough to live right now. All we now see with this data center is even more hardship. So for me, this is the continuation of the story of how there is a complete and utter disconnect between the people who are basically advertising and trying to push these data centers versus the people in the communities who are living and have to live with what these data centers will be doing and impacting their everyday lives.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Jessica, do you have anything else that you want to add to it?
No, it's so much, just 100%. I'm 100%
Yeah.
with you, where, one of the things that we really work to do, you've said it a couple times and it's so important, is that high quality of life, high quality jobs in place. Yeah, so how do we have, I just can't
Yes.
see any benefit. I don't even want to say it. I can't see any benefit from something like a data center coming through. But how do we look at then our rural communities supporting ourselves, creating a quality of life that includes clean air, clean water, good
Right.
food, jobs that we enjoy, and being in community and being in place, and not constantly
Right.
being, subject to extraction in one shape or form.
Right.
and to piggyback off that, I do think that part of the reason why these things are happening is because we haven't really invested enough into our own infrastructure for this to happen. We know that data centers can be powered with clean energy. We know that there are better ways, to supply the data centers with the tools that you need. But for us, it seems like, well, it's cheaper to put this here, and we don't have to necessarily follow all these regulations. So we can kind of we can skirt a few things that could honestly, if they would just add some minimal improvements, could actually improve the quality of life of the people around them and generate the revenue. But we are, in at least as I'm seeing, companies and business are making an active choice not to really do these things. That can be very difficult to reconcile when you know that there are alternatives possible, because now it's saying, well, you could actually give us something decent that wouldn't really harm us that much or really wouldn't reduce our quality of life much, but you're choosing not to. And now the question becomes, why? Are we not deserving of that?
It's the bottom line, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll piggyback off of what you said there too, because it was the same thing with solar panels going through, and there was a lot of pushback on that as well. It's not that people don't want solar, put solar on the barns, put it on top of the Walmart, put it over the parking lots,
Mm.
but don't take the prime, beautiful farmland and put solar up. And they've talked about, well, can you graze around it, or
Right.
what if it's removed? But those studies really aren't done. We don't know what's happening, but what we do know is you're then taking farms out of production. You're giving yourself less access to create food, and then that money again is coming from somewhere else. And the only reason that they want that flat, open farm, empty farm field is because it's cheaper and easier. So pay some extra money to do it in a little harder place that's actually going to support the local economy and support, the people around you, and make it a better quality of life instead of just what's cheaper for somebody else coming from out of town.
I'm really excited about this conversation because you are really breaking down and unpacking some of these details that most of us just reading the news every day, data centers, yeah, those are bad, but there's ways to be managing this kind of technology. There's also ways to be handling the renewable energies differently, so that, like what you say, Zaina, this is like a human-centered, eco-centered. So thank you so much for that. My next question, I wonder, would you like to get into a little bit of this political moment that we are in here in the United States a little bit? Is that yes or no way? I have a question to kind of expand on, if you guys would like to unpack it a little bit. Living in rural districts means we have to live alongside people who don't share our perspectives. In cities, we can insulate ourselves in our communities more easily, but in rural districts, we have to often overlap with a lot of viewpoints in public spaces. How are you navigating these intersections, and are you able to form even some unlikely allies for the work you're doing? Jessica, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I was going to say I can do that one. My basic tenet is everybody eats. And so that's something that we all have in common. And so really thinking about the things that we have in common, the values that we share, like we know things are different. We know everybody, has different things, politics and other viewpoints. You might like cats and I like dogs, whatever it is, So what do we find that we have in common? What can we work together on? And find those positions where we can make a difference and make things better. The really big thing is everybody that I work with, we love this community and we all want to see it be. And so that is something that's very strong here, is this love of place and this love of who we are and where we live. One of the other things that I think can be really nice in a rural community is because you see each other all the time. Like you said, if you're in a city, you can live different. You can be mad at somebody and never speak to them again.
Right.
The chances of that happening here, like you're going to see them at the grocery store, you're going to see them everywhere. It's like having a fight with your cousin. You're still going to see them at the family reunion. So there was actually one of my friends said, when you move to town, he's like, rural communities have a lot of repair work. Because we're going to have conflict and we have to learn to get over it and we have to learn to move on. So you have a lot of different points of contact and you have a lot of reason to come back together. So I would say we do tiptoe a little bit more because you don't want to cause those rifts. But we're, at least we do have a lot of commonality and a lot of contact. So you get to really know somebody as a person,
Mhm.
you know, and it's hard. It can be easy when somebody's a caricature or somebody, you know, you
Mhm.
just see a sign in their front lawn, you could be angry, but you're also like, oh, but that guy has, you know, such nice flowers. And, you know, and I see him here and, you know, he works with my dad. And
Mhm.
so you have those crossovers where you get to see everybody as a human. And I think that that's really lovely part of rural America that would be, you know, really nice to emulate in other areas too.
Mhm.
Excellent. That's so well said. Zaina, what about you? I can see you like agreeing, and
Yes.
I know you've got
Yes.
these experiences.
So I wholeheartedly agree with Jessica. Is the important thing is finding the commonality that we all share. For us, it's everyone. We all want better lives. We all want a better quality of life. How do we figure that out together? What I typically find in my hurdles is in my rural communities, because I come from the South, there is oftentimes a long history of division between people. There are grudges and hurts that honestly, in many cases, predate me, that some people genuinely have not gotten over. And if you've been paying attention to what's been going on, my, like I said, my other hometown of Memphis, Tennessee was just gerrymandered out of our representation. So we just kind of basically lost um, our representation in the Tennessee House of Legislature. So when these are all bringing up old hurts, of course, Mississippi is a rural district, but what we now see happening around us is almost like a rebirthing effect, in that people in this particular area of the South are now revisiting old memories of hurt. And so sometimes when I've had to work with people, I have had to really kind of work with people who have had a long-standing division and grudges that sometimes go beyond that. But one of the things that I try to focus on, or when I work with people, I try to focus is like that we all want at the end of the day something better for everyone. And we're only going to get there by working together. I would say for a lot of the problems is trying to get people to see past what's been happening, to see past what is going on, and to find a common ground to work on. Um, and the big challenge is, and I think this is also, as Jessica stated, it's like you see these people every day. So you know who they are, but it's very much now in some instances that people are choosing to maintain a grudge. Like, yes, I know I don't like that cousin. Yeah, I got to see you every day. I still don't like you. Yeah, I'll see you at the
Yeah.
reunion. I still don't like. I
Yeah.
still don't like you. But one of the things that we've also had to realize is that when you live in a small community, you have to kind of make do with the resources that you have. And in order to make things worse, you have to pull together your resources. You have to work with people around you. You have to have hard conversations with the people around you about what this is really going to look like for our people, for our future generations. And that for me, I will say, is something that we are still working on. But one of the things I do say is that as things are happening, we are now seeing more people beginning to say, well, this is not right. I don't think we should all be struggling like this. I don't like that everything's going up. What can we now do to mitigate this? And how can we
Yeah.
work together to mitigate what's been
Yeah.
going on and to mitigate the harm? And so, in my opinion, I'm always like, better late than never. Um, it's
Yeah.
always better late than never. But it is a long progressive work to try and get people on the same page. And that really does take a lot of time and a lot of patience. And really, as Jessica
Yeah.
was saying, finding the commonality, finding that central point that we all really want, and using that as a
Yeah.
starting point to go forward.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you talk about it being in the context of the southern states. There's like some unique experiences that you're navigating there. And I'm from Iowa and Minnesota. I really do not want to let the northern states off the hook, because our redlining and segregation and hurt looks a little bit different, and it's under the radar in different ways. And so northern states are also responsible for taking responsibility in forming intersections where we can communicate and work together, because we're dealing with things in northern states that's a little bit harder to put your finger on, because we didn't have some of the legal written in laws things happening. And so anyway, I'm always like, oh
Right.
no, we're not just going to say that's a Southern
Right. No,
problem.
because it's not just a Southern problem at all. And because part of the reason why this hurt is so deep is because violence. There was a lot of violence between different groups here in the Southern states that has quite literally lasted centuries, and that has really continued to solidify that divide, and trying to work around
Yeah,
that is, especially from people who, because the thing is, a lot of people in the rural communities, at least that I come from, or at least the people who are running the rural communities, are actually very old. So a lot of the leaders are, I don't mean to be, that's nothing wrong with that, but one of the things that
well,
you realize when you work with people like this is that they have a lot of wisdom and knowledge about what's going on, but they also
yep,
have the long memories of how things used to be.
yeah,
And in some cases that can make it
yeah,
very, very difficult, because they are, for many of them, still remembering a time where there was a
yeah,
lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of feelings of unsafety of people in their own community.
yes.
And that can be really tough to work around and really tough to work forward.
Zaina, thank you so much for that. I hope I can circle back after this and talk to you about some of the stuff that we're working through here in Southwest Virginia, because it's amazing how history is there, but it's right here among
Mm-hmm.
us, wherever we are. So thank you for that. So I want to ask a couple more questions. Do you feel pressured by urban organizers to play hardball in your rural districts? Say you're working with a environmentalist group, and they're based in the capital city of Ohio or Arkansas, and they want their activism might look different and maybe even more aggressive. Are you feeling any pressure?
Well, I'll say one of the things we're doing is we're partnering with a group coming out of Columbus. So that is our capital city and the largest city in the state. And they have an environmental professionals network. And they focus a lot on what does environment mean when you're thinking more urbanly. Urban, environment means something else. It's like the thing you go to. It's the park. It's the trees.
Yeah,
So we're actually bringing them up into Wayne County to do a tour this summer that really talks about how farms work within the environment and
yeah,
do environmental protection things on the farm. So farms play a
yeah,
huge role in our environment, but you always see this tension. It's like urban, rural, farm and food, and farm versus environment, and really looking like, how do we push all of this together? It's
yeah,
really interesting how it's like the same thing from two different groups can be looked at completely separately. So we're taking them out on a tour, talking about, microbes in the soil and different sort of lower chemical use techniques, and then how local food is moving and then saving all of those different emissions and carbon. So all of the different aspects of the roles that farm play. Water
yeah,
retention, huge, right? So
yeah. Zaina, do
yeah.
you have a perspective to share on
Well,
that?
in my experience, and this is just even coming from people who are working within politics, because some of the people I work with kind of overlap with other governments or other governmental bodies.
Yeah,
There, at least in my opinions, there are efforts to work together, but it just at the moment, for example, in Memphis, we already have a network. We already have organizations that are dedicated to working on trying to do their best to either work around what has currently happened, or to there. We're still continuing the fight to make sure that not any more methane turbines are being added, or to try and protect what we can of our community. But
yeah,
but that's Memphis. When we come to rural areas, we are actually still trying, it still seems like this is an effort that we're trying to make contact with the people. But there are oftentimes things like, who do we need to talk to? That is for us, that oftentimes ends up being the big question, like, who do we need to talk to? What networks do we need to tap in? Because as Jessica pointed out, there's kind of a divide between urban and rural, but everyone understands this issue impacts
yeah,
all of us. But it's now trying to find
yeah,
who do we need to talk to and who is going to be doing the work.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So, both of you, what do you need from the people around you to support the work that you're doing? What do you need from your communities?
Ooh,
Mm.
think.
I mean, if I were to go off the top of my head, depending on like for my rural community, it's oftentimes just more really information, mainly because when it comes to certain rural organizations, we can kind of be a little, sometimes depending on who you talk to, we can be a little tight-lipped about what we're doing and who we're talking to, or how we present that information to other people or even to the public. So in many cases, they one of the big things I remember talking with someone was like, okay, so how are you telling people about your meetings and things like that? And the response was, well, we put it in the newspaper. And I was like, okay, awesome. Um, have you also thought about social media or like putting it on a website so that more people can see that? And they're like, oh, well, that actually may be a good idea. And so that the big thing I would
Yeah.
need from my community is just more communication, more outreach to the public, because what I do understand is that there are many people who care about the issues and who want to know what's going on. The big thing is, like I say, who do we talk to? Where can we find more information about where we need to go to get involved with these types of things? So if I had to say one big thing I would love from particularly my rural community, and particularly in my rural community here in Arkansas, is more communication and more outreach and engagement.
Excellent. That's right. That I think that's a chronic issue across rural America. So you said it well. Jessica, what about you?
Well, I'm kind of on the opposite side of thinking about how do we support the rural community. And so the way that I'm working to do that is, first of all, through the networks and the network building and the social infrastructure,
Mhm,
because like Zaina said, knowing who to talk to is half.
mhm,
And so we've developed a lot of that over the years. How do we keep it going? Because that is so important, and not all just falling into our silos or falling into our busy daily
mhm,
life. So that's one of the big things that I try to do is to continue that network and the social structure. You can edit that out. And then the other thing that we really look for is we need some support. We've actually done some different grant applications, and we're looking for some funding to try to see what are the legal policies, what are the structure that we could do to help to support our community, whether we move into zoning, whether we look at other protection strategies, whether we look at economic development. So finding those tools that are out there, and then taking the time and basically making the time to go and communicate that through the network out to the community, so that people really have a full understanding of what's coming down the pipeline, what could come down the pipeline, and what we can do to build the place that we really want to be, and that supports us all in the best way possible. And so then being able to have that time and have those conversations so that we can be proactive, and that we can be responsive, and that we can be working on what we have, so that when something comes along, like a data center or whatever's next, because it's going to be something next. What do
Excellent.
we
Yeah.
what do we do so that we are set up for that?
mhm.
Excellent. Well said. Thank you so much, Jessica. And my last question for all country people. When you think of this land that we live on, which place in your homes really sings to your heart? Where do you go when you want to hear the crickets or walk in the snow? Is there one place that you can think of that really speaks to your heart?
Mm,
I'll say I was just there earlier today. I went just south of town. And it's a wetlands, marsh, wildlife area. And actually the sign said closed. And we were like, does that really mean the road's closed? And so we went down and almost got stuck, but it was just this beautiful place. We call it the Funk Bottoms. You know? But yeah, it's a marsh and wetlands area, and just you really feel like, like literally the swamp is overtaking the road. But it's just so beautiful, and there's flowers, and there's turtles, and there's herons, and all of
Aw.
this wildlife happening. And I do feel so fortunate because that was on my way to the meeting I had today, and I got to take a little side trip to do that.
Zaina, what about
For
you?
me, I'm about to ruin one of the best kept secrets, so I apologize for any of the people. If you're from Arkansas, you watch this. I am so sorry. But for me, it is a little place called Bear Creek, which is actually located in Lee County, Arkansas.
Mm.
And it is, I would say, one of the best kept secrets. It is a beautiful lake area that's out towards a forest that is actually protected. So it's really nice to just go out there to sit out, to go by the lake, and to essentially get some fishing done, get some swimming done, just to sit out and just kind of clear your head among nature. There's also a nature preserve, but you can actually go out and walk with the Forestry Service, as they have a museum out there as well. So it's very nice. A lot of people are starting to learn about it, but it's just for me, it's a beautiful place. Also, I love to go driving in my home county, because there is just miles and miles and miles of farmland. It's almost like a variant sea, a green sea. And for me, that kind of happens on kind of the outskirts of going out of my county when I'm just driving. And sometimes it's just nice to sometimes just park my car and just take in the fields around me. Um,
Yeah.
you can get a lot of thinking done like that.
There's nothing like pulling into a field entry by a cornfield and just putting it in a park and just
Hmm.
listening. And yeah, I just think too that Ohio and Arkansas are truly some of the most beautiful states in the United States. And people need to make those two states a destination because they're gorgeous. They're just
Yes.
stunning. And
I've never
so
been to Arkansas.
We call ourselves the natural state for a
oh
reason.
yeah.
It's one of our big things. So if you're a big outdoors person, um, Arkansas really is the place for you. In my time in the state, there are so
Yep.
many things to do, from the north to the south to the east to the west.
Jessica, what about Ohio and the beautiful rolling hills of southern Ohio and everything?
Yeah, that's right where we're at. Like I said, this is where the glaciers ended. And so
Yeah.
if it could be farmed, it was farmed. So outside of the swamp wetland area, the other cool thing is we have some ravines and some valleys where there's some really nice wooded areas that are all protected. But a lot of what we get is actually that agritourism. So like you said, Zaina, people coming out of town in the spring and just driving and seeing the beautiful rolling
Mhm.
fields, and then in the fall, the colors and the pumpkins and the little roadside stands on the side of the road. And so that's a lot of the thing that for those of us who live here, it's
Yeah.
like the water you
Mhm.
swim in. It's all the time.
Yeah.
It's just that, the beauty of it. Um,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of visitors that do that as
Mhm.
well. And then we actually have Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which is
Yeah.
the only national park of its kind because it was meant to be there for the urban
Mhm.
population, to give them some green space. And it's actually the only national park with farms in the park. And they have a special farms in the park program
Very nice.
Wow.
as well. So we work with them. Yeah, it's a really, really cool place. If you're coming to Ohio, there's a lot to
Th-
see. I mean, and we're sitting on Lake Erie, which is the
That's right.
largest inland sea,
That's right.
freshwater
You guys
sea.
have a huge lake, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would be hate to reminisce if I someone from Arkansas did if I did not talk about the only open diamond mine in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. So that is one of the
Oh,
one things that Arkansas can truly pride itself on. It's truly unique. We have the only open to the public diamond mine where you can actually go and mine diamonds, and what you find you keep.
I have heard
Yes.
about that
Yes, I
before.
would be very. I feel like if someone from Arkansas heard, like, why didn't you at the very minimum mention the diamond mine in Murfreesboro or the Clinton Library in Little Rock? There's also the
Oh,
presidential library there. So we're very proud of that.
Check and check.
yeah. Well, I have a bed and breakfast in Worcester, so you both are
I
welcome
love that.
anytime, and I'll show you around. You can have excellent food.
Jessica and Zaina, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. You have provided us with so many resources for rural communities around the country. And Jessica Eckelberry, you are in Wayne County, Ohio,
Yep.
and Zaina English, you are in
Mhm.
Marianna, Arkansas. And so I'm really excited to bring this to the barn raiser community. And as people reach out and listen to the episode, I'm excited to refer them to the resources that you've provided. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for
Thanks for having me.
and it's been a great pleasure.